Hey everyone, and welcome. And today we go into an amazing interview with Michael Wagner. Alrighty,
Sure.
but let's start off with like a general one and so on. Right now, Star Atlas is very focused on more the crypto, DeFi, and financial aspect right now of Star Atlas, and it's obviously that's coming with the staking and how the reward system is going along and everything. But what about the general gamer? What steps are being taken in order to basically introduce us more as the game aspect?
Yeah. Yeah. So, you know, realistically, the traditional gamer adoption has exceeded all expectations, particularly given the fact that our go-to-market strategy was not really to target the mainstream gamer initially, given the extended timeline that's going to be necessary to develop out this Unreal Engine fully immersive world.
Mm,
Our focus really was on marketing to the crypto enthusiast, or call it a crypto native user, simply because there's a greater degree of understanding and comfort with interacting with Web3 technology. That includes, the DeFi protocols that are out there, GameFi systems, the way that Score operates, even, right, which
mm,
is a kind of an enhanced staking mechanism, as I think the community is rapidly identified. Now, of course, they do have the gamification elements through the resource management, but
correct.
yeah, it is more of a crypto application. So the way that we develop out is to build on-chain logic for game mechanics like score, like ship missions, like mining and crafting in the future. Those will all be smart contract on-chain applications, and we deliver those to the minigame. And then, as we continue to refine and build out Unreal Engine environment in the future, we're able to directly integrate those experiences into UE. We're also building out an SDK that is developed specifically to integrate crypto protocols into Unreal Engine. This is we call this Foundation SDK. It's something that will probably be open sourcing to the community at some point as well. And so, whether that's for people that are building in Star Atlas or just looking to build blockchain gaming ecosystems in Unreal Engine, they'd be able to leverage that. And of course, we hope that people will build these experiences around Star Atlas and start to integrate with our player. But more to the point of your question, when do we start targeting the mainstream gamer? Realistically, we will enhance marketing activity as we release modules like the showroom. Uh, uh, Pretty well documented out there. Showroom is the first Unreal Engine experience that we launch. It's the first opportunity for players and participants to engage in that cinematic quality world, loading in ship models, exploring the interiors of ships, sending those out um, through some of the same mini game gameplay mechanics, but just through an enhanced user interface inside Unreal Engine. So, to kind of put that more concisely, we really haven't been targeting mainstream gamer advertising or marketing to them because we don't really have the experiences that they would be expecting to engage with.
Mm,
Right now, that being said, one of the metrics that I often cite is, looking at our Telegram community versus our Discord community. Seeing, I think we're at 155,000 people in Discord now, and we're still
yeah.
floating somewhere around 45 to 50,000 people in Telegram. Now, I've been in crypto a long time. Historically, most crypto communities center around Telegram. That's where you get the largest interaction with those crypto users. Discord, on the other hand, has been the kind of gaming a centerpiece or cornerstone for the gaming community for a long time. So the simple fact that we have 3 times the amount of users in Discord as we do on Telegram, to me, indicates that we're already attracting that mainstream gamer, right? Um, I guess the only point that I would make towards how we're advertising to them or marketing to them is through some of the visual experiences that are coming out of Danny's product team.
Mm,
So, looking at the cinematic trailer initially, and then going into the studio trailer with the Pierce X4, and then on December 25th of last year, when we released the in-engine trailer of the Visa Sopod landing in the showroom. Those are visual elements that will kind of describe or demonstrate to that mainstream gamer what the potential is, what the world's going to look like in the future inside Star Atlas. So we're really trying to inspire the imagination bring them in, start to develop an understanding of the concept overall, help them understand the potential of the economy and how this new movement in blockchain gaming would genuinely benefit them from a true asset ownership and monetization standpoint. So, I mean, those are the areas we're focused on, but it hasn't been heavy advertising or marketing whatsoever to the traditional gamer, and yet they're still really flocking in droves.
Yeah, no, I think it's more so as well because of the fact that like to quote your own words and so on, the game is already actually being played. It's
It's true.
how you define your own purpose within the game itself, or how you want to work your pathway from the beginning of the game, is how you play the game. Like with many communities bringing out different types of content, they're playing the game, finding content, they're playing the game, and there's so many different aspects of playing the game, and it's already been done. So there is people who are of the game returns and so on who are definitely playing the game already by staking their ships, resupplying all of those things. And some people don't see it that way, but I think it is a majority that do definitely see the whole we are already playing the game aspect.
I love it, and I mean, of course, I made the statement. I wholeheartedly support the statement. Things like theory crafting, community formation, guild formation, strategizing for the future, those all have an incredible amount of value for anybody who's participating today. Yes, it's not it's in a way it's difficult to make the argument that you are playing a game when you're participating in things like theory crafting, but nevertheless, they have long-standing benefits for those people who are engaged in that capacity today.
No, 100% agree. No,
Yeah.
can't agree more there. All right. So then moving a little bit more on to a couple of cream questions, basically, actually. So how exactly will land claim sales be handled in Cream Tier 0? Will we be able to buy like Tier 5 land right off the bat, like off of the market, like the GAO style, basically? Or will you have like a Tier 1 which will eventually basically upgrade into like a Tier 5, for instance?
Yeah, well, potential for both. We're still structuring through some of the economics on things like quantity, available supply, and what is the proportional distribution of, say, tier one versus tier five land claims. Naturally, the way we're thinking about this is that the lower tier land claims are going to be in higher availability. The tier five land claims, should we make those available, will be more scarce in supply. It's possible that we don't sell up to tier five when we make that a progression based system. Um, uh, but nevertheless, we do want to ensure that everybody can get access to tier one land claims. However, where we have to balance that out is looking, and the way we think about this from a modeling standpoint is, analyzing what is our existing user base, what do we think is a sufficient quantity of supply to satisfy people's demand or interest in land today. We also have to factor in the gameplay style and the mechanics of this grand strategy, wherein top down you're capable of managing multiple parcels of land, not just an individual parcel, and then also considering going into the future, wherein we can create mechanics where there's greater efficiency in each individual parcel of land should you operate with a team of players as opposed to an individual player, right? So getting really down into detail of, we have one individual that's managing a single building and the operations of a single building or structure, versus one player has five parcels of land and they're managing all operations across those. So again, looking at how we establish the balance between the efficiencies of scale when operating collectively versus individually. And so that goes into the model, right? How many parcels of land do we think an individual player would buy? Not only how many players do we have? And then the final really part of the formula is thinking about future growth over the course of this year and where we think we can get in terms of daily active users, our objectives, our OKRs for the year. We have goals of establishing a user base of greater than 500,000 people by the end of the year that are actively engaged in Star Atlas. So, quite a lot going into the economic analysis of availability. More succinctly put, again, uh, there will very likely be a range of tiers across land. Those will be sold through a galactic asset offering, similar to the way that ship NFTs are sold today.
All right, awesomeness. Well, that's awesome because it also then provides like basically where Cream has the aspect of also crafting and everything like that. You're actually trying to meet that ROK. Or I'm not if I'm not saying it correctly. Um, of the amount of player or user base that you're trying to meet, because right now there's only a certain total supply. By adding more to the total supply, it increases the potential for more user bases as well, basically, at the end of the day.
Yeah. There is another component to this in the way that we are structuring land, where there's really a bifurcation of kind of cosmetic land versus productive land. So, mining and crafting, this is productive land. This is either farming or mining operations, extracting resources, and then using those as inputs in a supply chain to create some output unit of value that can then be, say, sold to other players. One of the core crafting components to come out of Cream will be the R4 crafting. So those four resources necessary to participate in score. Um, Cosmetic land, though, is something that will be more like player habitats that will exist on central space stations. Now, you're not necessarily producing anything with that, but it is a place where you can go rest, you can aggregate, you can form, guild halls there, conference rooms, meeting rooms, things like that. So places where guilds and collectives of players will aggregate to socialize with one another. So we are also analyzing what the availability of those will be. Now, I would say openly here that we do expect greater scarcity in the cosmetic land than we do in productive land, because the productive land is absolutely essential to the functioning of the economy.
Correct.
So the last, sorry, one thing I didn't mention also about economic analysis on land availability is also trying to assess what is the, I guess, let's say, profitability of that land.
Mm,
Obviously, the more we issue, the lower each individual parcel of land would be capable of producing, because we do produce resources in finite supply, unlike the traditional MMO where you essentially have perpetual hyperinflation in the game, because every time you add a new player, they have every opportunity that every other player does.
correct.
Across our atlas, all of the resources are the resource extraction rates are factored against how many ship NFTs do we think should be created over a period of time? Again, factoring for user growth. So this is managing things like ship inflation over time. The more resources that can be extracted, the more it can be contributed to ship NFT creation, which ultimately dilutes the value of existing NFTs. So we have to manage that. And the same thing on, with resource crafting. If everybody is out there crafting an infinite amount of resources, then resources essentially race to the bottom and become essentially valueless.
Yeah.
So yeah, those are again kind of going into the formulas and going into the model of availability.
Yeah, that's actually so cool. Like, I actually didn't think more so about like the whole cosmetic land aspect as well. Uh, uh, Basically, just a question that popped in my mind with the cosmetic land section as well. For instance, would that availability only be on like say space stations, or would you actually be able to have like a cosmetic land aspect on a planet itself as well? For instance.
The current thinking is that it's largely going to aggregate around central space stations. Um, in the future, the potential is there to designate a say a commercial or residential zone on a planet. We are still working through kind of the mechanics of how that would work. What we don't want to do is necessarily take away from the productive capacity of a planet. But again, if there's like zoning, for example, on each of these planets, then it would make perfect sense that somebody could purchase a habitat there, or a guild could form an entire city, something like that, on a planet.
That's actually so cool to think about. That is actually so cool. um, Alrighty, but on to the next question. I wanted to find out, this is actually one really big one for me, is with the whole coming about of Cream, will transport ships be of great use for it? Because obviously with resources and even with ship crafting coming into play with Cream that was designated amongst the factions, there will be a transport and a tax fee on if you were to take the ship from one faction to another faction. Now, would there be an aspect where you could technically use your ship for a mission where you could take like the whole ship to another faction, for instance, or would they come and play only much later down the line with Cream?
Yeah, unlikely in green B0, simply because we don't have the geo coordinate system in place. So, how do you determine what is point A and what is point B without being able to specifically define that? So the way that we're managing around transportation is by implementing time requirements to say move a product. And these would be generalized time requirements to get something from one point to another without actually knowing where those are. Now, one mechanic that we could implement, although I don't know that we want to overcomplicate the mechanics of Cream so that we can deliver this feature sooner than later, but one thing we could do is start to make available enhancements or buffs or like if you're staking one of your ships that's a transport ship, maybe it reduces the quantity of time necessary to move an item, right? So things like that we could implement, although it does add a greater degree of complexity to the on-chain program that we need to write.
Correct. And what you could also do at anyway at a later stage is because Cream Tier 0 is like 0.0.1, you can come out with a version within 0.0.8 or something like that where that buff could essentially come in at a later stage. So that's the amazing thing about having this development is that there's always ongoing changes that can come about with new versions coming in even within Tier 0.
100%. Yeah. And it's, um, where we have to make the difficult decision is, do we focus on major milestones and more advanced gameplay mechanics, or do we focus on individual minor enhancements on existing gameplay? We already have a list of 25 different things that we could do to score that we think would make it more enjoyable and more interactive. But do we really want to focus on score, or do we want to focus on Cream, or do we want to focus on, let's like right now score is functioning quite well, people seem to be happy with it, we have a significant amount of TBL in that application, maybe we should focus more on the more sophisticated ship missions, which is score v1, potentially going into the end of this year, where you can actually do everything from fleet configuration to ship configuration, customizing modules and components, shields, weaponry, crew members, things like that. We are currently of the opinion that it would be better to work on those more advanced features that are going to be mainstay staples of the game going into the future versus making minor enhancements on the existing V0 releases.
No, that makes absolute sense. At the end of the day, what you're basically meeting is you're meeting the demand for people to at least have that game aspect or that play aspect with either cream or score and everything like that, where we are resupplying our ships or we are collecting resources and we are refining, and then later on down the line bringing in all of this massive update that comes in basically at the end of the day with tier
That's right.
one.
That's right.
Yeah, no, and that's awesome. Right, but now on the you're also talking about like that you can't geo basically location lock or anything like that currently, but you did talk, and I think it was like tunnel number 23 or somewhere around there, where it is heat maps, or if I'm not mistaken. And can you tell us a little bit more about like what kind of protocol or coordinate coding that basically is?
Yeah, and I'm sure Chip covered this a bit in the town hall. He probably covered this a little bit on Twitter Spaces, but it's this is essentially RNG, random number generation, or randomness across the universe, where you'll see core heat map differentiation or availability of materials will be faction based. That's kind of the high level. So we know that a certain quantity of resources are going to be going into each faction. And then it's very likely to be more randomized at the individual parcel level, given, again, that we don't have any of the coordinates at this stage. Now, in the future, when we do have a coordinate system, there's going to be greater degree of variability from, say, parcel to parcel or planet to planet, more likely planet to planet, less so parcel to parcel. And then it also vary based on the tier level of your claim. So lower level tier is only going to be able to extract not only a smaller quantity of resources, but lower rarity resources as well. So those items that are in greater supply. As you scale up to a tier 5 claim, you get greater productive output capacity, but you also get access to, say, deeper minerals that are in these planets that have greater rarity overall.
That's actually awesome. Yeah, that's I mean, like it just makes sense. The higher tier that you go, the more availability for rarer items you would basically be able to get dropped.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Cool. Awesomeness. So my next question is about factions. I'm curious about like the whole stories behind each faction, and I want to know more about them. At the end of the day, will there be more lore that will be coming out for each faction? as like Cream comes out and everything like that, because we see how Cream like basically broke down each faction with each ship now. So now we have a bigger basis for what each ship's lore is going to go along the line of with each faction. Would there basically be a lore that comes in for those?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I mean, we want this to be immersive, and the way that you get immersed is by engaging with the content and the storyline that underlies the game itself and kind of the history of Star Atlas. So, it is one of the areas that we're actively recruiting for is our writers, right, authors. Even looking at mainstream authors of major novels that, if I mentioned them, everybody would essentially recognize. So, bringing those writers in to start to enhance the lore over time is 100% part of the strategy. And then, I won't elaborate too much on it, but we do have a multimedia strategy this year. So, looking at not only written content to be released, but also audio based content to be released over the course of this year.
Mm. All right, okay, that makes absolute sense. And then I'm looking very forward to that because it's going to be awesome to see how the lore actually plays out between all the three factions and even the banished factions as well.
Mhm. Yeah.
So, on the faction topic now and everything like that, basically what some of our members wanted to know as well is when you basically, I actually also think it's more of a question for Chip, but I'll still swing it your way at the end of the day. When you gain reputation with one faction, basically being, let's say, like Fatoli at the end of the day, and you were wanting now to gain reputation with an opposing faction, which was like Jorvik, for instance. Now, they don't like one another or anything like that. Would you be able to gain reputation with both factions and keep like the equivalent amount of reputation? Or by gaining one reputation with one faction, you losing the reputation with another?
Yeah, it really is a great question. I don't have the specific detail on it. I'm just going to go out on a limb and say that you can most likely earn, say, loyalty or reputation with all factions. With that being said, having played many MMOs in the past, it also makes a lot of sense that if you're essentially earning reputation with one, that the opposing faction then starts to trust you less, right? So
Correct.
I don't know what I don't know what our game design is around that right at the moment.
Yeah, I also think Chip did say that in how one of the mechanics is where if you were, for instance, flying around with the Tufa and you had an association with the Tufa, for instance, your association or your loyalty with Cop was going down. So that was
Sure.
basically one of those things that was coming into play over there as well. All right.
Yeah.
Then another question is more so on the tokenomics aspect. So our members have been looking at like actively at the blockchain, and they basically noticed that approximately like I think it's 98 million Atlas and about 98,000 Polis was being sent daily to the same wallet every day. And now it's somewhere within the 1.2 million Atlas daily that's being sent and everything like that. They basically want to know is that an investor's wallet that's basically being sent over there, or what is exactly where's those funds basically going?
Yeah. I mean, I don't have the exact quantities in my head right now, but I will say we have the 2 year vesting schedule for anyone who is able to purchase tokens in that early access program. So you guys would recall that's something like 24% of the total token supply that was allocated to people that purchased pre-launch in early access.
Correct.
And the vesting schedule was to distribute 5% of their allocation over 10 days. That started in September. I think it was September 7th or September 9th, shortly following the close of the Galactic Asset offering on September 1st. And then the remaining 95% of those tokens are distributed over a 730-day period. So those are linear, proportional distributions to each one of those participants
All
in
right.
that program.
Okay,
Yeah.
cool. That's awesome. All right, cool. Thank you. And then, what benefits can like people expect from the up and coming Atlas like staking that's basically coming about?
Yeah, I don't want to speak too heavily on it right now. This is going to accompany our new market program that we discussed a little bit on the previous town hall, but looking at deprecating Serum for a lot of the marketplace functionality. We'll continue to keep Serum integrated for commodity-based markets where buy sell order books make a lot more sense and they're relatively intuitive to the user. We are still looking at making those UI UX enhancements, so user interface and user experience enhancements across our marketplace, so that it's a little more understandable to the average user, especially users that are new to crypto and maybe have never participated across an order book in the past, but or utilized an order book in the past. So the new market program is coming. And then alongside that, we'd be looking to introduce the single-sided staking. Single-sided staking would, first and foremost, provide some small amount of emissions of Atlas, significantly lower than what's being allocated to, say, Polis emissions, because the Atlas supply and the emission schedule needs to be divided across all activities and gameplay features. Again, being the primary reward token across Star Atlas, or the medium of exchange token across the Star Atlas universe. So some portion of the supply would be carved out and allocated to those stakers. But with the reason I mentioned the new market program is that it also enables us to create some type of checkpoints for. Sorry about that.
You're
Had
fine.
these turned off. It allows us to create some checkpoints in the market as well. And so let's say, for example, you want access to purchase the Titan, or you want to participate in the Titan auction. I'm not saying that this is the way that we're going to implement it, but it would be possible that we institute staking minimums in order to access some of those asset sales. And it could be as simple as if you want to participate in purchasing any of the ships, that you have to have some minimum balance staked to the marketplace.
Yeah,
So
so basically like an auction value, basically at the end of this, at the end of the sorry, at the end of the day, like an auction value or an entry level, basically. Like this validates that you have the qualification to actually technically buy the ship at the end of the day.
yeah, kind of consider it like a proof of economic interest, right? So you have to demonstrate that you're committed to the ecosystem through this staking. Again, we want to introduce ancillary and tangential benefits to that staking, which includes the ability to earn emissions. There's some, there is also potential for us to do things like provide discounts based on a tiered system of quantity of Atlas staked. All of these things are features that we're going to be able to introduce as a result of making the transition to the new market program, replacing Serum, in which we don't have a significant degree of control over the functionality of that, over that open source software.
Mm. No, I fully understand that. All right, cool. Then as well as like with obviously with the DAO coming in and everything like that, what is the like target inflation rate of Atlas that basically would be aiming for at the end of the day?
Of Atlas or of
No,
Polis?
of Atlas, not so much Polus, but more so Atlas.
Well, so we do have we have an emission curve outlined in the white paper. We are being cognizant of the necessity to retain some Atlas for future emissions, for future feature releases. I can kind of put it this way, though, just to simplify it. There's 65% of the supply of Atlas that was allocated to future emissions and game incentives. Both Atlas and Polis have emission curves that extend 8 years out. So if you were just to look at the simple math, approximately 8.125% of the supply of Atlas would come online every year to satisfy the game incentive emissions.
Correct.
Now, in addition to that, we do still have this 2-year emission schedule related to the original 24% that went out during direct sales or early access sales of tokens. So we don't have so much of an inflation target, if you will. I mean, sort of we do, defined by that curve. And realistically, the curve on Atlas starts at one point, it increases over year 2, and then it's a continuous decline. So more realistically, in the latter years, we have less tokens coming onto the market than we do in the earlier years. If that makes sense. And also if there's 2 ways to look at the at inflation, it's either based on the total quantity of supply going out, or it's relative to the existing quantity of supply in circulation. So, once again, if you're looking at the latter metric, then the inflation rate is going to be higher simply because the base is lower. The quantity, the top variable is higher than the lower, or is larger relative to the lower variable in future years, because then it's additive.
Correct.
Um, yeah. So and then Pulse is very much the same, slightly different curve. I believe I don't think that there's an up. It's a continuously declining curve. Now, in the case of Pulse, it's 40% of the supply that was allocated for future emissions and governance participation.
Correct. And then it was that the team had a certain allocation so that over a 2 to 3 year period that the community could take it over with the DAO. But essentially for that beginning period of the game development, that everything could run smoothly with the team's supervision over it completely.
That's right, and yeah, and I mean it's really probably closer to 3 to 5 years. We specifically designed that model for our own participation in the DAO. One really critical point here is that despite the unlock period, we as a team don't really have any interest in selling off our exposure to Polis. We are extremely long Polis because the only way that we can fully decentralize this and essentially turn it over for free to the world over time, the metaverse itself I'm describing, which I've often described as a public utility, well, the only way we can create this immensely valuable technology product and ecosystem and then just give it away is to retain our own interest in the future economic potential of that ecosystem. And so that's where we retain our higher proportion of the pull supply, and also our ability to stake that to the governance pools and earn those emissions. All of that was modeled out to ensure that we did have this extended timeline, to ensure that we build and deliver the product that we've envisioned before it goes fully decentralized. So all of those were factored in the emission schedule, in our ability to stake, and in our baseline allocation of the total supply.
All right, awesomeness. Well, it makes absolute sense at the end of the day that, I mean, you are developing it. You do also want a section of what is basically coming out of it at the same time, before it basically goes completely public,
That's right.
in the future, of course.
And by going completely public, essentially just again turning it over, right?
Yeah,
Not through the traditional model of if a company would be to build a product like this and then maybe go IPO or get acquired by some other entity.
yeah,
We're not doing that, right? We're saying here it's built, it's open source, and anybody can build and craft on top of this.
correct,
We enable the creator economy. And so our only retained economic interest is through our ownership of Polis.
correct. Which makes
Yeah,
absolute sense, and I mean that's awesome at the same time because it gives and opens so many job opportunities for for third-party developers with the open source application.
absolutely. It's very much mutually beneficial, and we fully appreciate the fact that the way that we're building the metaverse is kind of like the way that a layer one protocol like Solana would develop out an ecosystem. Ultimately, well, okay, so we have the gaming, which is the centerpiece cornerstone of the Star Atlas metaverse at the start, right? It's the feature that we believe will attract these masses of users into the ecosystem. But over time, the development of the metaverse itself becomes about a lot of other things outside of gaming. We'll attract people that are looking for workplace experiences, for entertainment experience, for academics, just for general socializing. All of these things are reasons for people shopping, right? E-commerce. These are
Yeah,
reasons that people will enter into Star Atlas, and they don't care. Maybe they don't care about flying a ship or owning a planet or attacking other players. None of those things are important to them. But we create the baseline uh, interest for the creators by building the initial user base through gaming.
correct,
Um, so when we get to that point, though, it's about building out the tool set that enables creators to come in and build on top of Star Atlas, again, with or without our permission, right? Ideally, these are fully permissionless systems and anybody can create and craft inside Star Atlas. And it will be a grand experiment, yet to be determined what does this environment look like when anybody can build in it. So
correct.
one final point on that is that we are also looking at instituting standards for development across Star Atlas, so you
Uh,
don't get this complete like Frankenstein of a product as the output, right?
Yeah,
Uh,
no, I was just actually about to ask that and so on.
yeah,
Basically, would there be standards put in place and so on? Because I can imagine with any development that actually comes into place and so on, you need to have like basically protocols put in place or basically requirements in order
that's
to
right.
be able to deploy this to this entire public domain at the end of the day.
That's right. Yeah, I mean, and I would see a lot of that hopefully being managed through the DAO in the future. Now, first we would refine the standard and we would deliver that, and that might even be introduced as a proposal through the DAO. And assuming that the community approves the standard, then it would be up to the DAO to uphold the standard. So, say an external creator could could create some presentation of an experience that they're looking to build, maybe on a planet, right? This could be a planet that's exclusive to this experience. Again, kind of isolated from gameplay, but still accessible in our metaverse. And then there would need to be a board, and the board would probably need to be elected and paid for by the DAO itself. So part of the earnings of the DAO would go to pay this board that reviews content that would be introduced into the universe.
Yeah,
And so, there is still needs to be a bureaucratic process. Otherwise, as I said, you end up with something that's complete Frankenstein that maybe nobody's attracted to, right? Because
exactly.
there's all these different building styles and graphical styles
Correct.
throughout the universe. So but I do see this as being definitely longer term
Mm.
in thinking. So we have some time to refine
Oh
how that
yeah,
will get
no, of course this is basically like 5 6 years down the line basically. But at the same time, what you're basically developing is a stepping stone for almost like and I quote this movie a lot, but it's basically what the metaverse is all about: a Ready Player One scenario.
Yeah.
Players can buy stuff within the metaverse, and it has real world value at the end of the day through all of their things.
I definitely see a world where your everyday shopping could take place, right? Like a grocery store, for example, could be inside the metaverse. You go and collect. Maybe you run around the store and collect items. What's cool is we
Exactly.
could actually like that could be. You could even incentivize that. You could create experience for the player in that shopping experience. They pay, maybe they pay USDC or maybe they pay Atlas, or we have to work it out with the merchants, but the items are paid for and then they just get delivered to you, right?
Exactly.
And I think like apparel is another great example, and we're seeing Nike and Reebok and some like shoe companies enter into the metaverse through, I want to say, Sandbox with the case of Nike. It makes a lot of sense if you could actually purchase a physical good, have that delivered to you, but then there's an incentive or marketing campaign in place that you also get the NFT that you can equip on your avatar, right? So
Exactly.
you get to represent yourself in the physical world the way that you want, and also in the digital world the way that you want.
Yeah, no, and I mean that's going to be such an evident thing with how people perceive their avatars. They want their avatars to be just as good looking, or even better looking in some cases than what their own appearance is at the end of the day.
I don't have any kids, but I have several friends that have kids, and a really interesting evolution is that a lot of their kids don't actually care how they look in physical reality, but man, they've got the best looking characters and best skins in the games that they play, right? Because that's what I mean. That's where they're hanging out with their friends. They're actually they're on Roblox and they're running around in these worlds, and they just want to look cool to their friends while they're gaming.
I can 100% agree with those people and so on. I mean, being a gamer myself and everything like that, how I want my avatar to look is how I want it to look. But and I mean
Counter
that's yeah, go for it.
Counter Strike kind of nailed this early on with the loot crates and the ability to customize skins on your weapons. And again, these I still play, and I know that there's a younger demographic in Counter Strike, and just like knowing that they're spending hundreds of dollars on skins for their Counter Strike character, I'm still running around with the wooden AK,
Exactly. I like I tried to get into that at one stage, but then after a while, just seeing how getting a knife costs like $400 or $500 at that time, I was just like, nah, I'm not gonna do this. But I mean, it like you said, it brings about a entirely new aspect because now people have that whole thing of I can actually customize the way I want to look and so on.
Yeah. I will say, and this obviously is a little bit of a biased opinion, but having that introduction of NFTs for something like skins, even to me, that's far more attractive. I would actually buy skins if I knew that there was a market for them that was openly accessible. Now, I
Mm,
know that there's places that you can go like trade Counter Strike skins, but it feels kind of sketchy and kind of shady, and they're like
mm,
dark market. I don't understand it well enough, but the point is, we provide these immediately accessible liquid markets for all character customizations, and so it actually makes sense to me to purchase them and customize my character in that scenario. Versus, I don't really care in Counter Strike. I'm
mm.
going in, I'm popping in, I'm playing a few games, and then
Exactly.
I'm not leaving. Right?
I'm gonna get a headshot here, a headshot there. Oh wait, now I died. What's going on now? At the end of the day, you don't really care what the appearance of the weapon is. You just care that that guy got a headshot and you got a headshot on three other people over there.
Did we defuse the bomb or not?
It,
That's it.
that's true. Did you buy a kit? Only pros buy kits. That's the real thing there.
Yeah.
No, but talking about now basically more so on like the NFT side of everything. Some of our community was inquiring about how do smaller players or smaller fleet players compete now with the larger fleet players when it comes to basically the purchasing of ships. Because a lot of the time, the smaller players will have an objective to buy a ship, for instance, but it either goes that it goes over price or over the original price,
Hmm.
or it goes over the VWAP, which is the
Yeah.
value average, no, the value weight average price, and then it goes a little bit out of their budget range at that point and everything like that. Is basically with the bringing of Cream and the creation of now basically like the smaller ships and so on. I'm pretty sure Chip said that one of the Fumble line will be the first iteration of the smaller ships and everything like that will come into crafting. Will be one of the first iterations. Just Fumble, plain Fumble, no accessories added onto it. With that coming into play, will this provide like smaller fleet owners with the opportunity to also basically like get another Opal Jet that's not above the VWAP?
Well, it's impossible for me to say that with any degree of certainty. What I will say is the extra small ships in particular were always intended to be virtually infinite in supply, so that the barrier to entry is always the same for anybody coming in the future versus someone that got in very early. Now, with that said, we're trying to delicately manage the situation wherein the X4s and the Jet is all sold out, right?
Yeah.
So the thinking is, one, we do have quite a few new extra small and extra small ships that will be coming online, and so as we release those, we'll be releasing those in greater quantities. In fact, all of the ships that are coming out this year are going to be in greater quantities, relative to their class, so the size. They'll be in greater quantities than the phase one last year ship
Mm.
NFT asset. Um, where Cream starts to create a really compelling case is, it's first, it's the circular economy, and we also get to determine efficiency of market structures. So presumably, if it functions like any other economic component, player demand is going to determine the availability of supply. People's willingness to pay a certain price for something is going to determine how many players want to craft that item. Players are going to be doing deep analysis on where's their greatest levels of profitability on any item that they can craft. And so, if there's significant demand for any of those extra small ships from new players that are coming in, then the theory is that people would craft them to satisfy that demand because that's their revenue stream. So
Correct.
this is where we start to really connect the dots between ships that we're selling, people being able to craft, and the items that people craft will start to satisfy the demand of user growth. Now, considering we're at 150,000 people again, as I said, in Discord, and maybe like 80,000 are maybe even 90,000 now that are staking assets to score, this is still an incredibly low number. We're targeting billions of people to enter into Star Atlas in the distant future. So even growing to 10 to 20 million users is substantial relative to the user base today. And a lot of that, again, a lot of that is going to be satisfied by crafting and creations from players in the future.
Yeah, no, and that absolutely makes sense, especially with how you said the players are going to go into deep analysis of what is the most profitable way for them to do things and so on. I know for a fact I do it, so I know other
Yeah.
people are definitely going to do it as well, and so on, to see what is their best profitable option in not only crafting but adding value back to the community at the end of the day as well, by either meeting a certain demand that is larger than others, of course.
I mean, this we're creating legitimate supply chains in digital environments. You'll see volatility in commodity prices as well.
Oh yeah, no.
I mean, every single input that's going into crafting a ship is going to be variable in nature based on supply and demand. So, people need to, and I wouldn't be surprised to see futures and forward contracts on commodities or materials, say minerals, in Star Atlas at some point in the future, probably through some decentralized protocol, again, that we're not developing out, but some third party will build because there's demand for their product. It's amazing to see the amount of innovation that we can inspire because of the gameplay mechanics that we're creating.
You actually, that what you just said right over there is actually so smart, because at the same time you're basically offering a service, or a DAC is offering a service which then people can order on, and then they're guaranteed on a certain amount or anything of that sort, and then it just, the DAC just starts pumping out this entire fleet the whole time for these individuals that are placing orders. It's actually so smart.
I should clarify for anyone that isn't familiar with a forward or future contract. It's essentially locking in the price of a commodity to be delivered at a date in the future. So you're not subject to the volatility between
Correct.
today and say 6 months from now when you want to buy it. You predetermine that price and contractually agree upon that, and then it's delivered by the producer. These came about through this was the Midwest. Like corn, I think was the inception of futures markets, wherein what would happen is this is the CBOE, the Chicago Board of Exchange, I want to say, um, wherein farmers in the Midwest, their crops all came to harvest at the same time every year, and so you would get this like wild volatility in pricing between harvest cycles. When all the farmers would bring their corn or crop to the market to sell after harvest, prices would dump because the supply would actually come online, but in the midpoints, prices would spike, and so they started to equalize that volatility by contracting out the production, their expected production of their crops, and harvest to be sold at a later date. So it was
Mm.
beneficial to the farmers and was also beneficial to the people that were purchasing these commodities. So again, I
No,
see the same dynamics playing out in Star Atlas supply chain.
that makes absolute sense at the end of the day, like how that whole thing came about and how it can be used within the blockchain aspect as well. Because then at the end of the day, you're offering a service which you're basically acknowledging that you're going to do it at a certain demand. And even with volatility coming in at a later stage and so on, you agree to an agreement, or gentleman's agreement almost in a sense, or a written contract to uphold this your end of the bargain, basically.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, if you're a sophisticated manufacturer that's operating under things like just-in-time inventory management, then you're projecting out what materials you're going to need at what date based on the timelines required to craft an item. Because that's a major component of our crafting system, is not only the material inputs but also the time to construct,
Oh yeah, no.
which those will be variable as well over time as we continue to rebalance the ecosystem. But if it takes you 3 months to craft a commander ship, then you'll want to maybe lock in the pricing of commodities for the next cycle when you start the next commander ship after that. So
Correct.
that's an arbitrary number I just threw out. By the way, I don't have any definition around what the timelines for
Oh yeah, no.
shipping, but that was just an example.
No, no, I know. It was just an illustration, basically.
Yeah.
All right. So then another question is like, why are you guys moving more away from the serum market itself and everything like that, and making up your own, basically like DApp as well, at the end of the day?
So I touched on this a bit in the, when we were talking earlier in the conversation. The core element is one. Well, first and foremost, there's some confusion around um, the way Serum operates, the way Serum order books operate, the whole kind of settlement or claiming process at the end for users that purchase items that end up in their inventory.
Mm,
That's created some friction for us in the past, and we want to resolve that. But more importantly, having writing our own market program again enables us to have a greater degree of customizability on the functionality of the market itself. So being able to institute a staking requirement that enables access to, say, purchase a new release of a ship, well, that's only really possible if we create our own market program. So that's by and large what it's all about. It's improving the user experience, but it's also enabling us to introduce a lot more mechanics that we can't do by using a predetermined program like Serum.
yeah.
Again, Serum makes a lot of sense for commodity markets where users are accustomed to bid side and ask side of an order book and looking at the quantities of those items. But last point I'd make on this is that the right now, Star Atlas assets are not truly NFTs. We consider them to be SFTs or
Yeah.
semi-fungible tokens, right? They're essentially any Pierce X4 is identical to another Pierce X4, but the idea is that these SFTs start to evolve into NFTs through gameplay and use in the future. So once you start customizing your ship with a new module or a new component or a new skin, a new paint job, a new slogan on the side, you take it out into battle and it starts to level up. Well, it becomes truly unique. And so it actually no longer makes sense for us to be able to aggregate all Pierce X4s that are now entirely unique in the same order book. In fact, we need to create more of an auction house style market since every item is, well, as I said, unique, right?
Yeah.
And so that we're thinking towards the future as well when these items become true non-fungible tokens as opposed to SF semi-fungible tokens.
That makes 100% sense because, like, at the end of the day, like you said, like some players are going to want not just the F4 for like what it like maybe what level it is or anything like that, but maybe because it has like a different looking skin on it or has this kind of emblem on it, or maybe even at a later stage, like the crew can be sold with the ship or something like that. But that's obviously just theory crafting or anything like that at the end of the day.
No, but
But
you're absolutely right. I mean, yeah, somebody could sell, a ship without any crew members or without any components, but has still modified itself since inception. And somebody might want to include everything, right? So they're going to price what they're selling different from how some other person's going to price it. The other place where I would still see aggregated markets is in the crafting output, assuming that there's no additional modifications on that. So if somebody just crafts the hull of a ship that's empty, and somebody else crafts the hull of a ship that's also empty, those are still fungible. Those
yeah,
are still interchangeable. And so aggregating those items into a unified order book still makes sense. So it's
correct.
just going to be a blend of serum-based commodity markets or SFT markets versus our new auction house style marketplace.
No, it makes absolute sense at the end of the day to be able to basically convert it like that because then you're meeting a unique player demand as well because they want a certain aesthetic maybe over just the original.
That's right. Yeah.
So, on the topic of ships and everything like that, with the GAO, basically tier zero have gone past and everything like that, we understand that there's going to be a unique, I don't know, but or there's going to be something unique about these ships that will basically differentiate them from other ships that are crafted in the future and everything like that. Can you touch up a little bit about maybe what that unique factor might be for those ships? Would it be like a module, or would it be an appearance-based thing, more along the lines?
Um, and I do have to make this my last question as well. Unfortunately, really enjoyed the conversation, but kind of closing out on this is the answer is I don't necessarily know exactly how we're going to implement it right now. It could be as simple as a component in the metadata that says this was a phase one asset. It would make a lot of sense also to have some unique cosmetic or aesthetic element to these ships so that, what it would probably result in is some type of airdrop wherein if you owned assets prior to a certain date that we still consider to be GAO phase one, pre-customizable, pre-modifiable, ships, then you'll get some skin NFT that's a drop that indicates that, hey, you were the one that owned this ship during that period of time when we were in early development. The downside to that, though, is that if we do these as NFTs, then it's possible for somebody to sell their Gao Phase One ship skin to somebody else. So we'd need to work through: does this need to be account bound, locked to character progression, or is this something that is a true NFT that can be resold later? Which I would not be very supportive of. We want to
Yeah.
make sure that if it's a Phase One asset, whatever the kind of uniqueness of it is, gets locked into that asset and can't change. So most likely just tied to the metadata.
All right. Okay, cool. That makes absolute sense at the end of the day and so on. But otherwise,
Yeah.
yeah. Swagner, thank you so much for your time and everything like that. I mean, I always enjoy having a conversation with any team on Star Atlas. You know me. Pop question after question after question, and then somewhere along the line, it's like, whoo, I'm here. And then, but honestly, it was a lot of fun chatting with you about whether it's CS:GO NFTs and so on, or gameplay aspects and Star Atlas in general. And I thank you very much for offering a lot of your time as well for this.
Yeah, no, it was a fantastic discussion. You always have great questions. You like to dig in deep. So, this is a world premiere debut of your personal appearance, I
I
presume.
yes, this is the debut. This is the world has seen Ronin now, never to be unseen again.
Awesome, man. Well, happy to be here for that world premiere. So, okay, guys. Well, thank you very much. This was awesome. I'm sure I'll be chatting with you all soon.
Awesomeness, and you must have a lovely day further, man.
Yeah, you too. Take care, guys.
Cheers, cheers. So, as you can see and so on, was a lovely and amazing interview with Michael Swagner. Very down to earth guy. Had so much fun in the interview, and honestly look forward to potentially having more interviews with him in the future. I would always welcome him with open arms in order to throw some more questions his way. But but otherwise, I hope you enjoyed this very much. If you did enjoy this, please do like and subscribe. And then, as well as you do have any questions, please do feel free to come to the Discord, as well as join the Twitter as well, in order to inquire and everything like that. But otherwise, I'll see you in the next one.